Boris Cherny, who is the creator of Claude Code, sat down for an interview. And interestingly, he said that even though we have capable models like Fable 5 now, people are still using them the same way they used Sonnet 3.5, which is why he says you're carrying dead weight into Claude and you don't even realize it. So if you can't get the latest models working right, it isn't the model that's wrong, it's the way you're using it. Now, these might sound like something you do once and forget about, but there's something you should be using every time a new model comes out, whether that's from Anthropic or OpenAI or anyone else. In the interview, Boris goes into detail about how his team works today. And honestly, who understands these workflows better than the person who created them in the first place? We've started applying the same approach ourselves, and we've found it really helpful. Now, if you're new here, we're a software company, and this is AI Labs, where we show you how to optimize a business with AI using proven methods from our own team. And in this video, we're going over which of his tips to actually use and how to apply them. The first thing Boris says in his talk is that you should delete your setup every time a new model comes out. And when Opus 5 shipped, Anthropic did exactly that to Claude Code and deleted about 80% of its system prompt. That sounds reckless right up until you look at what a setup actually costs you. Your setup is everything you've added to steer Claude, which include your claude.md, all the skills you create, your hook setup, and more. All of these are injected into the context window when you launch Claude and stay there the whole time. Now, we've talked about our second brain before, which is a folder that contains all our research, strategies, and more in one place, and the whole team works out of it. There's the usage command. It shows how much of your 5-hour window you've burned through, and it breaks down where that's coming from, which of your skills are eating the most, and which habits are driving it. In our case, it was workflows that spin up subagents, running several sessions at once, and leaving sessions going without compacting them. The reason deleting works is that most of what's in your setup was never about your project. It was for correcting things the model used to get wrong. We've covered a lot of frameworks that use /commands to control Claude on this channel, like bmad, GSD, and more, which fires the commands automatically at set points. All handed the model rigid steps so it couldn't wander off, because models needed that much hand-holding. On a model this capable, the hand-holding isn't helping anymore. It's the thing that's getting in the model's way. So to find out whether your own setup is earning its place, you strip it all out and watch how the model does without it. Run the context command in an empty session before you've typed a single word, and it already shows 3% of the million token window used up. That's the system prompt and the built-in tools loading by default, already shaping how Claude behaves before you've asked for anything. That 3% is Claude's own and you can't touch it. Everything on top of it is yours. But the better option is safe mode, which turns off all of your clutter, the claude.md files, the skills, the plugins, everything you've installed, and leaves you running on nothing but the base system prompt. Run the context command there and nothing of yours is loaded. Then you run the things you normally run and watch how the model does. If it's fine without your setup, that's your signal to start cutting. And this isn't something you do once. Every single lab ships a new model after few months, so if your project isn't brand new, its setup is tuned for a model which is 2 generations behind. The rule for what survives is one question. Would Claude have worked this out on its own? If it would have, delete the line. You see this most with the command that starts your project. Every time you made a new landing page and ran the init command in that folder, the claude.md ended up with a line that says use npm run dev to start it. You wrote that in because the previous models didn't know how your page starts and wouldn't run it unless you asked. That's over now because it works that out and runs it on its own with no claude.md at all. But anything where your setup differs from what Claude already knows, that stays in the claude.md. For example, you wanted testing through the Versal's agent browser instead of the one it reaches for by default. It can't guess that, or a test setup of your own, or a service that has to be running first, so you need to add that in. You don't have to do this by hand either. Anthropic shipped the doctor command and it trims by exactly that rule. It cuts what Claude could work out from your project and keeps the areas where it made mistakes, the reasoning, and anything that's different from what a tool does by default. We run it on that second brain every so often, especially after a new model release. It goes through everything you've set up and hands back a health report with a verdict on each piece and a list of things it wants to change. Nothing happens until you say so you can work through them one by one. One thing that makes rebuilding easier is that installing other people's skills isn't the risk it used to be. This is because Boris says that the models are less likely to get affected by prompt injections now. The obvious worry with any skill you pull in is what's hidden inside it. We installed a skill off GitHub and it had instructions inside it telling our project to send data out to a URL. Claude didn't follow them and it didn't quietly skip them either. It told us in the chat that the skill had asked and that it had skipped it because the skill didn't look trustworthy. Boris's line is that hidden instructions like that can't get through anymore, so so you can install what you want without treating it as a risk. But before we move on to the next tip, it would be great if you subscribe to the channel and hit the hype button. This small gesture of support goes a long way for us. Once you've stripped all of that out, something else has to tell the agent when it's actually done. And Boris says this is the single most important thing people get wrong. That thing is an eval, which is basically a fixed check that decides whether the work is done, and it has to be strict enough to fail. Saying run it and see if it looks better is just guessing with extra steps. A check you can't fail isn't a check. This idea isn't new. You write the check down before you build the thing, so there's never an argument later about whether it's finished. And it doesn't have to be a test, it just has to be something that can come back as a no. Some examples of these would be checks for seeing if a page fits on a phone screen, ensuring that wrong password doesn't get you in and the text has no M dashes. What the check looks like depends entirely on the job. Anthropic wrote up 2 of their own big rewrites, and between them they use 3 different kinds of tests. Bun is a framework Claude Code is built upon. Its rewrite had a full set of tests that all had to pass, and it had the 8 reviewer agents, each looking for one kind of problem instead of everything at once. The last one was a parity check, which ran every command through both the old version and the new one, and checked if the answers came back the same. The example worth copying is Boris's own. He gave Claude an empty codebase and told it to rewrite the Claude desktop app in Swift, run the old one inside a virtual Mac, screenshot it, compare that against its own version pixel by pixel, and not stop until it was done. That ran for over 2 weeks, and that comparison is the only reason it could keep going that long. Without something to tell itself it isn't finished, an agent stalls out in an hour and you're back to watching it. The checking you used to write into the prompt yourself, it now does on its own. Whenever we build an app now, we give it a simple prompt telling it what we want, and Claude works through the parts it needs to build. You used to have to put a line in the prompt telling it to check how the page looked in a browser. Now it launches headless Chrome sessions by default, which is a browser that runs with no window on screen, and it takes screenshots of different areas so it can see whether anything's overlapping. It also goes back over the code and flags anything that breaks a rule, so it catches what would have broken the app just by reading it. There is a limit though. All of that only catches what breaks loudly, but not the other issues that have to do more with just breaking the app. Only you can say what done and correct means for your task. And your checks expire too. Boris says they last 2 or 3 model generations, then everything starts passing and you need to throw the set out and write different ones from wherever it's struggling now. But before we move forward, let's have a word by our sponsor. If you've ever made an AI video, you know the real pain isn't the generating, it's jumping between one tool for the script, another for characters, another for scenes, storyboards, and editing, and then watching your character change face from shot to shot. So we brought the whole thing into Buzzy Canvas, one visual workspace where the entire workflow lives. You start with a simple idea, and Buzzy Canvas helps expand it into a structured video workflow, from script and character concept art to scene planning or storyboard frames or local edits and final video generation, all inside one visual workspace instead of jumping between multiple AI tools. Because every step is visual, you actually control it, adjusting lighting, camera angles, and individual frames, while character and 3-view references keep everyone consistent across a long video. Powered by first-look models like Seedance 2.5, Buzzy Canvas isn't just another AI video generator, it's a full production pipeline for films, ads, music videos, and more. Check out Buzzy Canvas using the link in the description. Knowing what done looks like also changes how much you have to write in the first place. We used to give it long prompts with each and everything in them, because if you left a gap, it went off the rails. Nobody trusted the model with more, and the prompts matched. Now you say what you want, and it works out the route. If you tell it how to do something instead of what you want, you'll never get better than your own approach. Boris says experienced engineers are the worst at this, because they're trying to get the model to do the task exactly the way they'd have done it. What works now is higher level, so you only need to describe the task, along with the limits it has to stay inside, and what finished looks like, then Claude will figure out the rest. The other half of the same habit is aiming higher. Give it tasks slightly harder than you think it can handle, because you only write all that detail when you've quietly assumed it can't take the whole thing, and that's actually out of date. And there's a second version of this that shows up the moment you try to get a design out of it. You take an inspiration image, hand it to your agent, and tell it to build a UI inspired by that design. What comes back is a near copy. So instead of handing over the image, describe it. Say the style you want and the look you're going for, instead of giving it the answer and it works out the approach itself. And it's not only design. The same thing shows up when you're using it to come up with ideas. You give it one that worked for you, ask for more like it, and everything that comes back looks exactly like the one you gave it. Anything concrete you hand it, it treats treats as something to copy instead of something to learn from. So describe it instead, and it has to work its way there itself. Now, the rule at the start actually came from Boris, and it was to delete anything Claude can figure out on its own. But that's only half of it, because he also says every team should still be writing the claude.mds and skills that let an agent work on their project without being told anything extra. So there's still stuff worth adding, and when the model keeps getting something wrong, the question is what kind of gap you're looking at. There are 4 answers, and they go from the cheapest to the most expensive. The cheapest one is that the instruction just isn't clear, and to fix that you just change the prompt. That's most of them, and it costs you nothing. The next one is something the model needs to know every single time, and that's what goes in claude.md. You need to keep this lightweight. This could be a quick line on what the project's for, and then the things that would trip an agent up. Anything it can see for itself is just dead weight. Then there's the thing you're explaining for the 5th time, and that's when you make it a skill. Skills work best as lightweight guides that let Claude find information when it needs it, so you don't want to lock them down with rules unless the area actually calls for it. They're worth writing when they hold something that's particular to you or your team, because Claude already knows the generic best practices, so writing those down is just waste. And if a skill gets long, you split it across files so only the part it needs gets loaded. The difference between claude.md and skills is when they load. Your claude.md gets loaded on every session start, but a skill only gets read when Claude actually needs it. So the short, always true stuff goes in claude.md, and anything long or occasional goes in a skill that claude.md tells it to go read. In ours, that's a short claude.md at the top with most of the detail in skills next to it, like the instructions for how to verify our work, because Claude only needs those when it's checking something. Same instruction, except one costs you every turn and the other costs nothing until it's used. And the most expensive one is when the information's somewhere Claude can't get to at all. That's the only one where you build it a way in, and this is where you use an MCP server, which basically connects it to whatever's holding that information. This one isn't for when it misunderstood you, and it's not for when you're repeating yourself. It's for when there's genuinely no way for it to know. That's everything you can do with a single prompt. When a job is too big for one, you split it across several agents, and there's more than one way to do that. You can hand the parts out yourself with sub-agents and decide what each one gets. The way Boris brings up is the dynamic workflow, and that's for the jobs that need hundreds of agents rather than a handful. You say use a workflow, and Claude plans the whole thing out itself, splitting the job up, sending a wave of agents out at once, waiting for all of them to report back, then sending out the next wave based on what they found. You don't plan any of it. We don't recommend actually using them though. The biggest example is that bun rewrite, where 1 million lines of code got rebuilt in under 2 weeks off a single prompt, with them steering it along the way. What nobody mentions is that it cost about $165,000 at API pricing, and once it was all added in, 19 things were broken that none of their existing checks had caught. And the money is the smaller problem here. When one agent goes wrong, you lose an hour. And when hundreds of them have been running for 2 weeks, you lose the whole 2 weeks. You get no result at the end of it, and you can't tell which one started it. That's too much to risk on anything you're actually trying to ship. What we use instead is routines, and they're the ones you'll actually use day to day. They're recurring jobs that run in the cloud, so they keep going after you close your laptop. Anthropic runs 20 to 30 a day across their apps, and each one is a single sentence, which is something like clean up all the stuff you don't need, including the stuff left over from features you already removed, because the agent still reads through it every time it goes looking around your project. Write tests for the parts that don't have any, so you're the one who finds out when something breaks instead of a user. Find the places where the same thing got built twice and merge them, because if you're working on a large project or second brain system, the models tend to forget the things already exist. Now, all the skills and workflows and everything else we build and show you in all our videos can be found in AI Labs Pro, which is our community. So if you found value in what we do and want to support the channel, this is the best way to do it. The link's in the description. That brings us to the end of this video. If you'd like to support the channel and help us keep making videos like this, you can do so by using the super thanks button below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.